So this is a long video. I think it's gonna come in at just under half an hour long. I wanted to say a few things before we get into it just because it is so involved. I did it over a 3-day weekend. It's really easy to get confused about stuff. Just take your time, go slow, make sure you have the service manual. There's no way I would have been able to do it without it. I just searched around online and found a PDF for it, and like, you need one for this. No way I could have put the bike back together without it. I'm gonna assume that you know how to take off the radiator and seat, depending on which. In order to check the front cylinder, you're gonna need to take off the radiator or just kind of dangle it down and get in there. It's kind of weird. I just took it off. I thought that was easier. You're gonna need to take off the seat, probably the gas tank for the back one. And then if you need to adjust the front valves, you need to take off the airbox and throttle body. I'm gonna make videos on that, and so look for that link in the description if you guys need help with that. The spec for the intake valves is 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters, and for the exhaust it's 0.2 to 0.3. So know that when you're measuring them. Get some feeler gauges. I'll put the ones I got in the description. I bought them off Amazon. They're like under 10 bucks. I also ended up getting a valve shim kit just because everywhere I called wanted like $5 per shim, and I thought it'd be easier just to buy the kit. It was kind of expensive, but I thought it would be worth it just because I had to change out so many of them. Hopefully you guys don't need to change out that many. I had to swap out, I think I ended up doing 6 out of 8 valves. I changed out shims. Let's get to it.
These are 8mm bolts. Loosen them, this will pop off. Once you get the spark plug out, you take your 6mm hex socket and open these up. I'll just take these off by hand now. I already cracked them. Now that we have the cover off, we can take our 5mm hex again and take off the 3 bolts. There's one here and there's 2 on either side in the back. Okay, we're on the left side of the bike. We need to open up this and this right here. This one, when we get in, it'll let us crank the engine so that we can position the valves correctly, and in here there's a little line right there. That'll line up with whatever's underneath that, and it'll show us exactly where the engine needs to be. So let's open this bad boy up. This is a 10mm hex. It's just a little cap. I've heard that these gaskets go bad real quick and you need to replace them, but I mean, this one looks like it's doing fine, so might not do that. With our 8mm hex, we're gonna open up this top one here. This will let us see where the engine needs to be positioned. I already cracked it, so let's just unscrew it. Oh, washer down. So it looks like there's a washer that goes on there. Remember that. If we look inside, we can see some markings, but we're gonna crank the engine through here and watch this in there. To this hole, and we're spinning the engine. If you look at it while this is happening, the chains and the cams and everything are moving. Look in there. It shows you where you're lined up. You want to make sure that the cams are lined up as well. You can't see it here, but here, maybe. Damn it. Yeah, you can't really see it, but the lobes are pointed this way and this way. If you look at your service manual, you will see that A is for the front cylinder, and those lobes are pointed out like that. B is for the rear cylinder, they're pointed that way. You just want to confirm that before you start checking your clearances. Alright, hopefully this is a better angle and you can see what's going on, but we have the actual lobe here and then this base, and we want to try to fit this in underneath. Alright, we've got our 1mm blade. We're gonna try to scoop it in underneath the cams, but between the buckets. Looks like these are fitting. For the intake, it should definitely fit for the exhaust. And it does. So let's go one size up. Let's try this 127. So make sure you guys are writing these down. We have our feeler gauges out. We're trying to stick them in underneath the cam lobes above the valve shim buckets. So I have a 1.78. And that is the biggest one I can get in here. This is the exhaust valve and it's the right one. So make sure you're keeping that all organized. Over here on this one, the left one for the exhaust, I can get the 0.2 in. So that's barely within spec. This is 0.203. And then up on our top ones. And then for the intake, here's the 0.1. And I'm able to get these in pretty easily. Here's our 0.2. I'm not able to get this in. So that means it's within spec. So I wrote down all our measurements here. For our intake, we have our left and right, which is our intake. We have the left here and the right here. It's how you'd think about it when you're sitting on the bike. And those are both 0.127. Our spec is between 0.1 and 0.2. So these two are good. For our exhaust, we have this left one, which is 0.2, which is very, very close to being out of spec. And then our right one, which is 0.152, which is definitely out of spec. We need to stick a bigger valve shim in there. Before you start taking everything apart, it's good to look at it. When you put it back together, you have this 2 arrow here and this 3 arrow while you're lined up with your front. You should count 16 pins in between these two, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Our arrow's pointing here at 16. Our arrow's pointing here at 1, just to give you an idea of how this all fits back together. So let's start pulling apart. Alright, this back here, this thing, is our cam chain tensioner. This is what tensions the chain for your camshafts. You're gonna have to take this off if you're gonna be changing out the valve shims. If you're gonna be adjusting your valves, you need to take this off. Before you take it off with these two 5mm hex, crack this. Makes it a lot easier, or take this off. There's a spring in there, it's all spring loaded. In order to get it back in, you have to push in a pin, shove it in there, and it doesn't work unless you have this bolt off, and it's much harder to get off if you have it off the bike. So let's crack that now. So we're going to crack this with our 12mm socket. We're back. I totally just punched the camera, but this is loose now. So that's good. We can take it off once it's off. Now we take our 5mm hex socket and try to get these bad boys out. Here we are. So with our cam chain tensioner removed, our chain is nice and loose, And since our intake is within spec, we're only worrying about our exhaust down here. We're going to start by removing these bolts. It's a 10mm socket. These are a giant pain in the ass to get off. I had to tap it with a hammer a few times. There's dowels here and here that hold it in. So get creative and get that out, but do your best not to scratch it up. It's aluminum and it's pretty soft. But with that removed, we should now be able to pull out our cam lobe. Boom, look at that. Now we need to know what size shims are underneath these buckets, or I guess this bucket, the right exhaust one, because that's the only one that was out of spec. I think I might replace this one as well, just because it was so close. But we're going to grab a magnetic little thing. It's going to grab the bucket and pop it off. And inside there, I don't know if you guys can see it, but this little thing in here is our valve shim. So if we tap it free, it looks like this. So normally these things will have a number printed on them, but this one, it looks like there was at one point a number printed on it, but you can't see it anymore. We're gonna take it to our micrometer, and it looks like that's measuring at about 0.17, so we're gonna use that number. Alright, so our shim is 1.7 millimeters. Our gap is 0.152 millimeters, and our spec is 0.2 to 0.3. So we're gonna move this up from a 1.7 to a 1.8, which should add this to be 0.25, hopefully bringing us to the middle of that spec. Okay, so I took some more measurements off camera, and I was able to get this 0.2 in it was tough, it was very, very tight. So I'm probably gonna go up a half size here. That's one shim size. And then I'm gonna go up a full here because this was stuck between 0.152 and 0.178. So I'm hoping that, or I'm gonna go up a full size here, which is 2 shims, which will put me at either 0.25 or 0.27, which is within our spec of 0.2 to 0.3. So we're gonna grab some shim. Alright, so with the new shims, you just kind of drop them in there. They're magnetic, and you just want to slide them to the center so that it, lines up in the center, just like that. And you just take it, walk over to the bike. If it's kind of dry, you want to put some oil in there. So I'm gonna set it down. Just grab some oil from here, stick it in there, keep everything lubed up. There we go. So you just gotta line it up, and then it pops right in. Ta-da! So I've been saying 1.8 and 1.75, but really it's 1.6 and 1.65. I was going the wrong way. I need these to be smaller, not bigger. So we need more space in there. We need to go down, not up. That's a really dumb mistake. I'm glad I didn't get this all put back together before I realized that. So make sure you guys are double checking that. Alright, if you have the service manual, this part's on chapter 3 of the engine and page like 103 or something. It's different for the front and rear, but basically you have your intake up here, your intake camshaft, and on the sprocket right here there's this number 3. You start counting pins, so this is the first pin, it's right above the 3. You get down here, and that is supposed to line up with the 2. So right there, we have our 2. And that's supposed to be 16 pins, so this right here is supposed to be 16 of these pins away. So we need to move our 2 up to the top. If you do this wrong, you're gonna mess it up. Look at the service manual. Alright, look in here. We have our number 3 pointing up, we have this pin. 2, our number 2 pointing up, we have this pin. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, which is this pin. If you look at the service manual, it says right here, we have 2 for the exhaust, 3 for the intake. Wait, is that right? Yeah, 3 for the intake on the front cylinder head. And it looks like we did that right. We're gonna plop all this back on, get our cover back together. Also, you want to make sure you're doing your best to put oil on all the moving parts, just to keep everything running smoothly and lubed up. Put a little on here before you put it back in, just to keep everything running smooth. Alright, when we put it on, we're going to make sure our arrow is pointing to the right or side left, and just like this one up here. We got our teeth counted out, and I believe we're ready to get this put on. So that's all tightened down now. We got our 0.2 millimeter feeler gauge. We're gonna slip it in here. It goes in. We're gonna slip it in here. It goes in. Sweet. So let's just try this 0.2791. Make sure we're within spec. It does not go in. And does not go in. So we're between 0.2 and 0.3, and that means we are within spec for the front cylinder. Let's move on to the back. Take this off. I'm going to make sure it's not wearing on the underside of this. It looks pretty good. Okay, so now I got our crankcase lined up with the rear cylinder for top dead center. We are going to start checking our clearances. Both of these lobes are pointed in this way. These lobes are pointed out this way. They're both kind of pointed in a little bit, but they're both pointed up, so just something to think about. Okay, so this right exhaust one is between 0.2 and 0.22. So this one's actually within spec, but all of these other ones are very much not in spec. So we're going to be changing out these 3 here, making them all a lot smaller. Alright, so here are the thickest sizes I got in for our rears. For the intake, I messed up before. I measured it when it was in the wrong spot, so these are crossed out, but these are the ones we're looking at. For the intake on the left one, I got a 1.0 or 0.102 in there, which is in spec but just barely. Got a 0.076 in the right one, 0.178, and that is not in spec. These 2 are not in spec, and these 2 are barely in spec, so I think I'm going to go up in all of these with just a half size. before we pop off these covers here, we want to make sure we're taking off our chain tensioner. It's the same thing as on the front, but it's on the back. Here it is here. You want to make sure that this bolt's loose before you get it off, or else you're going to have to put it back on and loosen that bolt in order to get it back on. The bad thing about this rear one is that it's located in probably the worst spot on the bike. It's back here next to the exhaust. It's that empty hole right there. I took a right foot peg and just zip tied it up out of the way. These are the bolts that hold it on, to give you an idea of where this is. It sucks. I mean, take your time, get one of these universal little doodads, and that'll make your life a lot easier. You can finagle it, just get it. Oh. So take the covers off. We are going to be replacing these valve shims for all of the valves, all four. We're going to replace them and go up half, or down half a size. We need it to be smaller. We're going down half a size, not up. I keep saying up, but it's down. We're going down half a size. So we're going to pull them out, see what size is in there, and go down half a size and put them back in. So let's take these off. Alright, I'm not sure when my other camera died, but when you take out both the camshafts, you want to make sure you keep the chain up. I'm using the gas tank rod or whatever to hold that up. If it falls in there, it's just a pain in the ass to pick back up. Also know that the camshafts, they have markings on them, INR. That means intake rear. This other one is EXR. That means exhaust rear. Just know that. I'm gonna pull these out and see what size shims we have in there, just like the front, and then put the new ones in. Alright, I got the new shims in. Put oil on everything after you do that. One thing I noticed is I got one of the shims to sit the wrong way. It was pointing up instead of laying flat, and it wasn't hitting. I mean, this bucket was over this. It wasn't sitting all the way down, so just pay attention to that. And if these are sticking up too high, make sure that you sat your shim correctly. There's a little piece in the top of the valve, I guess. It should sit perfectly in there, so just make sure you guys are doing that. Lube it up. Look at that. Oh yeah. Oh, that oil though. Oh. Alright, let's put our camshafts in. So this is the intake, which is in the front. So we're going to set that here. We're gonna take our rear one. Let's take it there for now. Actually, let's take it out. There's one more thing we have to do because we took out both of them. We have to make sure the engine's in the right spot and all kinds of stuff so that these will fire correctly. Is that hair? That's dog hair. That's not good. So to get the timing and everything right, we've moved this so that the F is in front, and on our sprocket we have our 1F pointing down for the exhaust. It's pointing to flush here. If you look at your service guide for the engine section on page 103, it'll talk about installing the front camshafts and the rear camshafts. So once we're here and we're at the F, we have to run this all around one more time and land at the F again. And then we're gonna install our back camshafts. You have to do this so that everything is in sync and the timing is all right. So, 1F is down. We're gonna rotate this 360 degrees so that we have F again. I had to put the camera down because it was a pain in the ass, but we're back at the F. Now you'll notice that we don't have the 1F down, we have 3. We have 1F pointing straight up, 2 is pointing to the flush of this side over here. You can see the 2 right there. So now we can install our rear camshafts. Alright, so according to our service manual, we're going to take our rear intake camshaft. We're going to find the 1R, which is on top, and that should point flush with the mating surface of the cylinder head. So that's the C right there, is the 1R. Then you take the number 2, count 16 pins, and that goes to the number 3 over here. Okay, here's our intake camshaft. We have the 1R arrow, which is right there, and that has to line up flush with this surface here. So you want it like that, so that when you look at it, it's pointing directly at the surface. Then we're gonna put our chain on. We are going to look at the point from this 2 here, just like we did before for the the front cylinder. We're gonna take this 2, count 16 pins, and go to this number 3. We have our intake. We have 1R, which is pointed straight at this surface here. The flush surface, that's what the arrow should be pointing at. We go over to our 2 arrow. We have 16 pins. I counted them like 5 times. Between the 2 arrow and the 3 arrow of this exhaust camshaft. Now that we have that all lined up, we're going to put on the cam chain tensioner for the rear. So we have it here, it's all laid out. Make sure this pin's retracted. You gotta push this in here. It opens up, and then you can push this back as long as the spring's out. So we take it, find our R up, which means rear up, and we're gonna shove it back in here and put it all back together.
So right after that, my camera died, and I'm guessing if you made it that far, then you'll have no problem putting everything back together. The only advice I have is to double check that your pins are counted out to 16 still. That can, I don't know, if the chain's tensioned, it should be fine, but if something moves, that could be very bad. So double check that. If you found this video helpful, let me know. Just like, subscribe, comment, do that YouTube stuff, and I'll keep making these videos. I hope that everything went well, and yeah, if you haven't done it yet, then good luck.